This is the 2005 Visa Men's Gymnastics Championships for the United States. We're at Conseco Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, Indiana. It was a year ago when the U.S. men's team took silver at the Olympic Games in Athens, Greece. The Hamm twins, Jason Gatson, Blaine Wilson and company, now all sitting in the stands. There's Jason Gatson nursing a back injury with Mohini Bardwaj, and Morgan and Paul are firmly entrenched at Ohio State. We wonder whether we'll see them back on the gymnastics scene or not. That remains to be seen. Right now, these are the names that we are seeing. After one of 6 rotations, Todd Thornton has the lead over David Sender and David Durante. And it is with David Durante, a graduate of Stanford University, that we start things off. And this clearly is a fresh slate, clean era in men's gymnastics in the United States.
And he is one of the top guys. There's no doubt about it. He told me before the competition that he's looking at all of the injuries of the top guys and the Olympians that are not competing. He looks at it as a tremendous opportunity for himself.
That's Tim Daggett. I'm Al Troutwig, along with Elfie Schlegel and Andrea Joyce.
And Al, David also mentioned that last year he was very much an underdog, but he looked at people like Paul Hamm, looked at the way they trained, competed. He said he learned how to be a champion, and it was a real honor to train with someone like Paul Hamm. And he says coming into today's competition, the finals, he had hoped that he'd be a little higher in the all-around placement. And he said he's planning on no mistakes today.
Had a lot of trouble on his first 2 events in day 1.
Almost everybody did.
Yeah. Made a major change though, was a graduate of Stanford University, worked out with their team, decided to take the trip to Colorado Springs and train at the Olympic Training Center, along with Coach Vitaly Marinich. He was actually in the final trials and part of all of the selection. Did not get that plane ticket to Athens, but was in the game. Well, a much better routine from David Durante, doing a good job here in day 2.
Tim, you mentioned he made the move to Colorado, and he said what it's allowed him to do is focus totally on gymnastics. There are no other outside distractions for him.
Beautiful double laid out somersault, and this is what you gotta do. You gotta nail that landing, and he does.
Durante wearing the uniform of Team USA gets a 9.175. And now Geoffrey Corrigan.
Now you're gonna see scores like that all day long on the men's side of the sport. The rules were hard enough as they were, but they went back after the Olympic Games, didn't have a major overhaul of the code of points, but what they did is they made it 4/10 harder on virtually every event. So that routine prior to the Olympic Games would have most likely received a score about 4/10 higher. Geoff Corrigan, he actually won one of the qualifying meets for these championships. Trains at the University of Michigan with Kurt Golder. And this is a little bit sloppy. One of the problems, the rules demand so much difficulty, and sometimes you end up doing those parts. He's getting what's called bonus for these elements, but the problem is he gets a 10th here. Maybe he gets 2 10ths in combination, but he's losing 2, sometimes 3 on these elements. So.
Yeah, they all add up, and in the first night of competition, he only scored an 8.15.
Corrigan will soon graduate from the University of Michigan, and the collegiate aspect is something you don't see in women's gymnastics.
Really, the men certainly don't reach their peak physically until much later. This is a very difficult move. It's called a peach with a full turn. Very off balance, and because of that, you see the legs kind of flopping around a little bit. Every time they come apart, those judges' pencils, they scratch, and there was a lot of scratching to come up with a 7.9.
Wow. And now Jonathan Horton from Oklahoma University and Houston, Texas.
This is awesome. He is one of the most exciting young kids, and this routine is just, it is jam-packed a member of the Oklahoma Sooners. His first release.
Wow.
He is nowhere near done. He'll do it now with a full turn. One more time here. Beautiful work on the high bar.
And he is on today, unlike the other night where he had a couple of spills.
But watch this. This is unbelievable. 3 twists. Oh, yikes. That is so crazy. That is crazy.
And he almost nailed it.
A triple twisting, double laid out somersault. If you told me I'd have had to do that when I was a kid, I'd have said, I'm going to try another sport, because that is radical.
When we come back, the only Olympian. He's been part of the American gymnastics scene for almost a decade, Shawn Townsend. As we get used to all the new faces in American gymnastics, we say goodbye this week to Blaine Wilson. In 2004 at the Visa American Cup in New York's Madison Square Garden, he ripped apart his bicep muscle. Certainly that removed any prospect of going to the Olympic Games. No, it didn't. Blaine showed up and with his signature moves on the still rings helped the United States claim a silver medal. Finally, after 5 national championships giving him the Olympic medal he coveted. This week at the age of 31, he said goodbye, finally emotionally, to the sport he loves.
This moment was coming. You know, it's kind of tough, but I'm officially retiring from gymnastics, and you know, it's kind of difficult. You know, coming in here knowing that I won a national championship in '98 here, all I have to say is thanks, and I look forward to spending a lot of time with the rest of the guys out there and watching them win medals and supporting from the sidelines and doing as much as I can. And, you know, also going home, and I can't wait to see my family and celebrate this. So, thank you.
Well, there's a big emptiness now in Team USA. USA Gymnastics has had Blaine Wilson around for a long time and 5 national championships, and it was interesting to finally see the emotion come out of him.
Yeah, it really was, and he has had such a remarkable career, has done so much, as you said, 5-time national champion, a member of 3 Olympic teams, and I'm so glad it was right. He deserved it to finally go out and win an Olympic medal.
This is David Sender.
One of the up-and-coming young athletes, very physically strong on both upper body and powerful on floor exercise and vaulting as well.
And interesting, talking to him, David said, you know, I'm known as a specialist, I realize that, but I really want to go for the all-around competition. To him, that's still a prestigious title to have.
Really gonna see a change in the gymnastics landscape. I would venture to guess that in 2008 at the Olympic Games, certainly the majority of the athletes will not be all-around gymnasts. I would think a maximum of 2 athletes will be doing the all-around at that point. And you'll see athletes like David Sender who really can contribute on floor exercise, vaulting, maybe rings. Some of the big names that we know, like Jason Gatson, he no longer does the all-around at all. Doesn't even do floor exercise and vaulting.
So we're used to seeing in gymnastics guys who can start, relieve, close in terms of pitchers in baseball, but pretty soon it's not going to be that way. David Sender gets a 9.075, and we've seen a lot of these relatively low scores, and there's a variety of reasons for that, as Tim and Elfie have gotten into. Now Shawn Townsend at the age of 26, still part of USA Gymnastics, but he is one of those guys who is only competing in 3 events. Here's his first attempt on the parallel bars.
This happened in rotation 1, and he was just a little bit off, and 2 days in a row on parallel bars, an event that he is a former world champion on. He just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, Tim, he said after day 1 he felt like the P-bars were just jinxed. He couldn't figure out what happened.
He's got his release coming up right here. Perfect. Does it in combination, gives them some extra bonus tenths. He is off the bar. That is a mandatory 5/10 of a point deduction. Very tricky skill. Not what you would call a hard skill, a very tricky skill to get your hand back down on the bar. He just didn't get it there fast enough. And
you know, this has to be so frustrating for Sean because he practices well. He says that all his preparations leading to these national championships just indicated to him that he was going to hit. He was going to have a great competition.
Well, it's extra hard when you zeroed your game down to 3 apparatus, and now 2 for 2, he's fallen off.
Yeah, this has not been Sean Townsend's best effort. He had some rough years after being so successful in 2000 and then the world champion on parallel bars in 2001. I really thought he had an excellent shot to make that 2004 team. He told me he thought he had made the team, but look, his arm just doesn't get all the way around the bar. You have to be very quick. Wrist has to be turned so the entire grip can get on the bar, and not today.
You can see it all over his face. 8.475. Next up is Todd Thornton. He's been part of the USA Gymnastics scene for about 8 years now, 22, from Houston, Texas. But he's been one of those guys who's been on the outside looking in of the major players. And this is the kind of day, in the absence of all the Olympians for the most part, that Todd Thornton could make a name for himself.
Yeah, he could certainly capitalize. He trains alongside Sean Townsend. And he, like David Durante, said, hey, this is an opportunity for me.
And interesting, he said that he and his coach, Kevin Majika, after the first day of competition, they made a conscious decision to go with some easier routines, and they would decide after the first day how to tackle day 2.
Also was in the hunt to make that Athens team. His big release in combination right here. Perfect. Very, very difficult. There's a full twisting back 1.5 over the bar, and then goes into a very tricky pirouetting skill.
Long, clean lines. He always looks so aesthetic up there on the high bar.
Sticks the landing, and we haven't been seeing very much of that.
Scored a 9.15 in the first day of competition.
What's with all those bandages?
Well, he actually has a little bit of instability in his shoulder, and by taping it that way, it relieves a little bit of the discomfort, gives him a little bit more flexibility also. Beautiful release. And what's so tricky is he's got to catch and then instantly let go again and do 1.5 twists. That skill called a ribalco.
You heard Kevin Majika say much better than day 1, and it is a 9.3 for Todd Thornton. That's going to make a statement in the standings and increase his lead to 3/10 over David Durante, David Sender, Guillermo Alvarez, and Geoffrey Corrigan.
There are 25 gymnasts competing here in Indianapolis, but Todd Thornton is one of only 14 that are doing all 6 events. A year after America's Finest Hour turned in by Paul Hamm in Athens. What's going on in the sport, Tim?
Well, you know, they keep making the rules harder and harder, and in the sport of men's gymnastics, there's 6 different events they have to compete on, 4 for the women. So they've figured out that it's just too hard. They've reached the limits of human potential, and they've started to specialize. They realize that's the only way that they can be in contention to make a world Olympic team and have a shot at a medal.
Elfie, what does this all say to you?
Well, it says that it was incredible what Paul Hamm did last year in Athens, winning that all-around gold medal, first American to do so. And when we're seeing these low scores in the 8.0 range, it reminds us how very difficult it is indeed to complete 6 events. And, you know, Paul Hamm just might be that once-in-a-lifetime athlete.
And there is Paul Hamm right with his brother Morgan. He'll be signing some autographs and making his way down to Andrea Joyce to explain what his future might hold after this. It was a night to remember in Athens, Greece, the night of the men's all-around, when Paul Hamm, after badly stumbling on the vault, turned in a high bar routine for the ages. It turned out to be one of the most exciting and memorable nights in the history of men's Olympic gymnastics. All the way to the final punctuation mark. And yes, there would be the judging dispute about a tenth of a point here and what might have been had the judges viewed things differently. But when all the math was done, Paul Hamm and the coaches could not believe it. From an unlikely all-around gold medal to 2005. Now in Indianapolis, Paul Hamm is with Andrea Joyce.
And Paul Hamm, of course, won the last 3 national championships. And I have to tell you, it's so weird to be talking to you on the sidelines at this event. What's it like for you?
It's a little bit stranger than normal. Normally I'm out here competing, but it's kind of a good situation to be in. I was really looking forward to coming here and actually getting a chance to watch the competition.
So you're taking some time off from the sport. You're focusing on school. Where's your head right now, though? When will we see you compete again?
For the time being, I'm planning to just continue training and not compete. I'm trying to focus on school a lot, and I'm planning to come back probably the 2007 for that U.S. Championships.
So your Olympic teammate, Blaine Wilson, retired just recently. What were your thoughts when you heard that?
I actually was kind of expecting it. Blaine had told me prior to the last Olympics that he was planning to retire after that Olympics. So it was expected, but at the same time, it's kind of a shame to see such a great athlete go. But I've talked to him, and we're really good friends, and I think that it was the right time for him.
Well, without you and without Blaine, the team right now doesn't have a real leader. Is that important for now?
I think for now it's a good situation for a lot of the guys here. They're getting a chance to feel the leadership role. I know there's a lot of great up-and-coming gymnasts that are really showing themselves here. So hopefully by the time I come back, our team will be even stronger and we'll be able to join up and have a good 2008 Olympic Games.
Well, I know the guys out here miss you out on the floor, so good luck, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
One of the great Olympic stories. Parents building a gymnastics set in the attic, and it goes on to become an Olympic gold medal. Amazing. To Geoffrey Corrigan.
He is sitting in 5th place in the all-around coming into this round. Actually, a lot of things at stake at these national championships for the gymnast that comes home with the all-around championships. He earns an automatic berth onto the world championship team later on in the fall. Here is his release skill. Gets both hands on the bar, does it in combination, like we've already seen today. Very tricky, and that was a problem.
And that's a bigger problem.
Yes, it was. The same element that we saw Sean Townsend fall on earlier. A 1.5 twist, and what makes it difficult is the grip position that the hand has to contact the bar with. Makes it very tricky to hold on. He definitely looks at himself as an all-around gymnast, but I have to say that as we get closer to the Olympic Games, more and more of the athletes will decide to specialize in 2, 3, 4 events because it's just going to be too hard for them to make an impact and make that team in the all-around position. Well, that's going to really hurt. That is, he loses a lot of bonus, and I don't think we're even looking at a score anywhere near the 8s, so not a good day.
Sean Golden from Houston, Texas. He's got an interesting story to tell.
Yeah, he's
hey, coach, help me out.
a great kid, and he's already made the decision that he's only doing 3 events. He basically put his entire life on hold, was really trying to make it as an all-around gymnast, and just couldn't do pommel horse. That's all it came down to, and made a call to Kevin Majajka, the Olympic coach, and said, will you take me? And that's too bad right there. That tumbling pass is worth just a ton of bonus if he makes it all.
He can be so explosive.
He really is. He did one too few rebounding elements, though.
Tim, you talked about him being a specialist, and his specialties are rings, vault, and floor exercise. Kind of an unusual combination of events.
Well, he actually, in day one, remarkably, he had the best performance of anyone. He won all 3 events that he entered.
Well, and he feels that those 3 events are events that the U.S. are actually weak in and where he can contribute.
There are actually a few gymnasts who came here to the national championships and did just 1 event.
It's true. Can't imagine doing that. Can't imagine spending all that time and getting 1 shot. Well, it was a very, very good routine, but he did have that mistake at the top of the routine. That's going to cost him.
Yeah, nowhere near the 9.35 he scored on the first day.
Unhappy with that, we go to David Sender. 8.5 on the pommel, not what he wanted. Rings a little better, 9.075.
And this could be much better. He's very powerful. If I had to pick an event that he really shines on, it is vault.
Well, he's the defending national champion.
Very, very difficult. He'll do a round off onto the board and then 2.5 twists off right here. Great ball.
Scored a 9.575 the other day.
On this, you make sure your chest is up and finish all the way through the shoulder.
Certainly,
right?
that good. It was a great vault. He had a lot of power, similar to the vault that we saw Paul Hamm fall in at the Olympic Games. 2.5 twists off the horse. Only error is that he lands with that foot outside of that white line. That'll be a 10th off.
David Sender gets a 9.625. Golden on floor exercise. He gets hammered. 8.25 from the judges. When we come back, we'll find out what Todd Thornton does with his lead at the 2005 Visa Gymnastics Championships. Looking at Joseph Hagerty, first year on the U.S. national team, originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico, but he trains with all the rest of the guys at Colorado Springs, Colorado. And one thing we know today, Tim and Elfie, we're going to see someone achieve a level of prestige they have never come close to in their careers in this national championship.
Well, similar vault. Sukahara with 2 twists as opposed to the 2.5.
Straight legs, no?
Getting chastised by Vitaly Marinich for landing his vault with locked legs. Very dangerous and also nearly impossible to have a good landing. Needs to absorb just a little bit more, and once again steps outside of the line, and that's a no-no.
9.25 for Joseph Hagerty. Now to the man who was in front, but a few minutes ago we watched David Sender get a fabulous 9.6. And Todd Thornton now has to answer if he wants to hold on to his lead.
Very unique mount that he'll be doing. It's an Arabian somersault, double somersault in the stretched position. Only a handful of people in the world try this. Oh, very, very difficult. Somehow, I don't know how he did it, Al. He stayed on his feet. That foot slid out when he landed. Remarkable he didn't sit down. Todd tells us that he got a new sponsorship he's really excited about. Same people that Lance Armstrong works with have supplied him a tent that he sleeps in at night. Lowers the oxygen content. He says that he feels that this will help him recover faster. So far he thinks it's working, thinks he feels a little bit better.
I don't know, sounds very claustrophobic to me. Well, floor exercise is certainly one of his fortes, just a couple of little wobbles here and there on the landings of each of these dismounts.
but he's been very solid today.
Yeah, he had an 8.875 on the first day, and this is much improved.
After the second rotation, he had a few tenths to play with. But this is going to be a little bit dicey now. As we go to David Durante, 9.075 and a 9.175. And even with those scores, he's still in the mix.
David actually traveled to Europe the same day that the U.S. men's team left for Athens. And that culminated with him going to the men's team finals. He said he just wanted to experience that because he said, I'm going to be there in 2008, and I don't want it to be the first time that I'm ever at the Olympics. Actually, a very nice vault. That's about as good as I have ever seen David do. Very clean in the air.
Gave himself a little hand. He scored 9.4 on the first night.
A lot of times he really doesn't get such a great jump off of his hands, but that was about as, like I said, about as good as he could do. That was quite nice.
And a lot better start to his competition. The other day he had misses in his first two events. Said he just had way too many thoughts running through his head. Needed to clear his brain and just do his gymnastics.
See what the judges give David Durante, and it's a 9.375. On vault, that's a good number. So he enjoys the moment. Meanwhile, the slips on floor exercise cost Todd Thornton a 9.125. He is no longer going to be in the lead. And as we look at the standings, after the third of 6 rotations, David Sender is in front. Todd Thornton next. David Durante, Guillermo Alvarez, Horton, and Hagerty tied in 5th. Bella Caroli and Nadia Comaneci side by side as they were in 1976 in Montreal when she made history recording a perfect 10. And now many might debate what the rulers of the sport of gymnastics are doing by almost making it impossible for someone to get another perfect 10 in the future in the Olympic Games. David Durante to the parallel bars. We go to Andrea Joyce.
Even though David Durante didn't make the Olympic team, he did have a presence in Athens. That's because American artist James Childs used him as one of the models for the Olympic mural he painted. That mural hung in Athens throughout the games, and it depicted the 8 original sports of the Olympics. Durante was the chariot racer. Now, you may think that that's an easy way to get to the Olympics, but it wasn't at all. David told me that he had to pose for hours and hours in the nude. He took a lot of grief from his friends and his family, but he told me he did it in the name of art.
A lot of things have been claimed in the name of art. What a story. David Sender's coming up. He's got the lead over Todd Thornton. And David Sender has an 8.5, a 9.075, and then really the score that flipped this competition upside down, the 9.625 on vault.
And he actually needed that big number because these next 2 events for David Sender, starting on parallel bars, are not where he is strongest. He has a low start value here.
Yeah, Tim, on the first day he scored a 7.85 on P-bars, so.
Well, he's better than that, but he actually doesn't do the types of skills that you're needed to bring in a lot of bonus. This is his most difficult combination. A small step there, that'll cost him a little bit. It's actually a rather short routine and really only 3 elements in the whole exercise that bring him those bonus points, so not going to get a big score.
Not much to say after that. Now our first look at Champaign, Illinois' Justin Spring. And I'll tell you what, the Illini have brought some fans here to Conseco Fieldhouse. It's amazing, really, the difference between men's and women's gymnastics. The atmosphere, the collegiate thing, and that changes the way the fans react to the gymnasts. There they are.
Yeah, they're very vocal, these guys.
I mean, you don't see that in women's gymnastics.
No.
No, they don't take off their shirts, no.
He had a great vault in the first day.
Oh.
Oh, he's so aggressive. From the moment he kicks off from the first step all the way to the end.
Yeah, he had a great vault on that first day. 9.675 was that score, but that's not going to do it here.
He actually does not do the all-around. Competes on only 4 events at these championships.
Ouch. David Sender absorbs an 8.1.
You definitely got credit for the mount sequence.
As Justin Spring puts a 9.375 on the scorecard. We're going to go to Pommel Horse and Jonathan Horton, who has an 8.725, a 9.05, and a 9.25. It's just weird getting used to these scores.
Well, get used to it because this routine, I was talking to Jonathan, he has so many things that he's so great at, and he's like, I hate Pommel Horse.
And but you know what? He also said he has the greatest challenge for him is controlling his emotions and his frustrations. This is an event where you can't let that come into play.
Well, it's just his body type is not that well suited for this event. That's all there is to it. His arms, very strong and powerful, but not really that long, and so it makes it harder for him to have clearance over the pommels. This is a good job for Jonathan, though. He did. He survives.
And as you see, Horton leaves, Thornton enters the stage, and we'll see whether he can mount a comeback. That's all still to come. And we will also see David Durante, the chariot racer, on the parallel bars when we come back to Indianapolis. Back with more of the 2005 Visa Men's Gymnastics Championships. Jonathan Horton getting an 8.6.
Very good for him. Nice routine.
And now Todd Thornton, for a while the leader, but after a 9.125 on the floor exercise, he gave up that leadership to David Sender. But now Sender has struggled a little bit. We'll see what Thornton does with that opportunity.
And he certainly can capitalize. Sender only getting an 8.1. And Todd certainly capable of being in the 9s on Pommel Horse. You can see the contrast in body types between Todd Thornton and Jonathan Horton. Much longer, looks a little bit more smooth as he goes through the exercise. It's very difficult, this one pommel work. And finishes right up through the handstand. This is a good job.
And that very well might put Todd Thornton back in the lead.
Yep. Why not? Good job, Todd. Just a couple breaks. Keep it going now.
That's what it's all about. Keep it going now. David Durante coming off a very good vault score.
3 hit routines for David Durante, and he said that's all he needs to do to accomplish his goal, and that is to guarantee a spot on that world team. The gymnast that wins the all-around is the only one from these Visa championships that is guaranteed that spot.
You know, after talking to him after the first night of competition, he said, I will definitely be a very different athlete for the second day. A lot of my mistakes came from new skills that I was trying out in this competition.
Done much better all the way through the competition, and this routine certainly a very good job.
So David Durante is 2/3 of the way done. Todd Thornton gets a 9.1 on the pommel horse. David Sender got clobbered with an 8.1. Okay. Durante gets an 8.925.
On the press.
That looked low. Thought that was a little bit better than that.
Now Todd Thornton grabs the lead as we see another new face, Guillermo Alvarez.
Coached by the newcomer Mike Burns, the new head coach at the University of Minnesota. Guillermo actually a very good vaulter. He'll do a Yurchenko laid out with 2.5 twists, a lot of power. Oh! He is also competing in the all-around, but this is going to be interesting, Al, because on vaulting, if you do a hard enough vault, the men's program committee, which controls men's gymnastics in this country, has said that you're allowed to repeat it if you're doing at least a 9-9 vault. And my guess, after this, a lot of power on this vault, but you saw the big step and landing off of the mat.
Yeah, really much better on the first night. His vault score was a 9.4.
So he has the opportunity now to repeat this vault. And I look at the number that he's flashed, and he is repeating the vault.
So they're trying to encourage guys to do hard vaults.
Exactly, exactly. And they will take the highest of the two.
Oh.
And it's not going to be that one.
So, I don't know. I mean, he's just going to take the 9.375, I guess.
He's going to take that, but in this vault, even more deductions, a little bit of form and nowhere near the landing. Look out, judges.
Yeah, the difficulty, of course, as you can see, it's a blind landing, but he's just way off.
Now, wait a minute. It looks like he's doing a third vault?
Well, he's got to take that score for the all-around. There actually are event championships that are going on here as well, and he's trying to be considered for those event championships. And so this is a totally separate entity.
And the best one of the three.
And he's going to wish that he had taken that one first. But once again, that vault does not count towards his all-around total. It only counts for the individual event awards.
Talk about do-overs. So Todd Thornton grabs the lead once again. Now David Durante is in second place. David Sender, after that 8.1, goes down to third. This all means that Todd Thornton has 2 rotations to go. Next up for him, the still rings. Our second look at Joseph Hagerty, who's had a rather haggard day so far in the final day of the Visa Men's Gymnastics Championships. On the high bar.
Speaking of high bar, he actually started his career at Gold Cup Gymnastics with Ed Birch. Remember way back to 1992, a guy named Trent Demas did a move very similar to that.
And won the gold medal.
Sure did. That was Barcelona. Seems like a long time ago now. But this is actually an excellent routine. A lot of those pirouetting skills that we've seen so many athletes struggle on today, and
wow,
great.
That was more like it for Joseph Hagerty.
Awesome, Joe. That's great. That's what the doctor wanted, okay?
This young man has been around for a long, long time. Never really developed into the potential that he's showing here today.
Tim, I know you talk about the intricate moves that the guys do on high bar, but really it's skills like this that get the audience going. They love this kind of stuff. It's great.
This is a very common element that many of the gymnasts are doing. That release skill into that hopping pirouette.
That's a good number for Joseph Hagerty, 9.375. And now we go to Jonathan Horton. A couple of scores in the 8s, couple in the 9s.
He's capable of getting a 9 here. This event suits him much better than pommel horse. He's always been strong. Look at his arm. He took a big shot on parallel bars the other day, and it's all about perfect positions on still rings. And each one of these strength parts right there, a Maltese, has to be held a minimum of 2 seconds. And some of these are just a little bit short. Very nice positions. They look good, but they're not quite that full 2 seconds. So he receives a bit of a deduction for that. Good on rings, but not quite what we remember from a guy like Blaine Wilson.
So that's Jonathan Horton. Now we're going to get our first look at Yuki Tomita, the son of Yoichi Tomita. And when you hear the Tomita story, it's just so good. But it needs a different ending than it's had so far.
Yeah, it sure does. I tell you, he is such a thoughtful person and was really on track. He told me nothing ever went wrong in his life. In 1999, made the World Championship team and then started to have shoulder problems. Just barely missed qualifying for that 2000 team. In one of the chosen spots, he could have been chosen for the team. Said he didn't watch a moment of the Olympic Games from Sydney, Australia. Quit along the way. Found himself at the University of Arizona. He said, I was a celebrated athlete. Got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do his job, which was delivering auto magazines to convenience stores, and said, I was a celebrated athlete. Now I'm waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to drop these magazines off at 7-Eleven. Decided that he wasn't done and he could give it one more shot. 4 shoulder surgeries in 2.5 years. And I tell you, he looks great, Al.
He still has it. You look at his resume, and the last thing on it is the 2000 Olympic trials in Boston, Massachusetts.
You just think if deserving something means anything, a guy like this is going to get his shot. And this has been great, wonderful exercise.
And he could be one of those specialists.
He certainly could. He's not going to be a guy that is going to be a Paul Hamm-like gymnast. He just doesn't have the body for that. The upper body strength is really going to wreak havoc on those shoulders. But events like high bar and pommel horse, no question, he can be world class. That was his first release. Picks up a little bit of speed on those giant swings, and we'll do another one, this time with a full twist. There's nothing better, Al, than coming around on that release move and seeing the bar and grabbing on.
Remember his dad saying he always dreamed that Yuki would be his gift to America as a gymnastic champion, to say thank you for bringing him to this country, and that's a really good score. When we come back, the man who is in front, Todd Thornton, at the Visa Men's Gymnastics Championships. Here in Indianapolis, Indiana, they really wrap their arms around amateur sports, and for these gymnastics championships, local artist Walter Kanabe designed that mural here at Conseco Fieldhouse. They actually renamed the street outside Tumblin' Pass. And there you see Blaine Wilson, Paul Hamm, and Carly Patterson, all part of this artwork that is all over the arena and on the backs of all the competitors as well. And there you see a banner that is also part of that artwork, and it's given this event a very special feel. Now we'll see what sort of a feel Todd Thornton has. 2 events to go. He's got the lead, on the verge of maybe winning the biggest championship he's ever won.
And although this is not one of Todd's best events, he's got 2 very consistent events. Still rings. You don't see many athletes fall off the rings. This is his big part. He pushes from one strength part to another. Once again, maybe a little bit short on some of the holds. You look at how still rings has evolved over the last 5 years. The magnitude of strength that's needed to bring in a big score, it's really ridiculous.
Todd Thornton.
Now, you talked about what a serious competitor he is. You get that sense when you talk to him as well. And he said, you know, for him, the ultimate would be an Olympic or world all-around champion. And he really stressed that word all around. He said, I'm going after it. There's no way I want to be a specialist. I want to be known as the all-around.
So he pushes from a low Maltese position and pushes up to a planche. Very, very hard.
And Thornton Another score in the eights, 8.725. And yet, it still may keep him in the lead. Now David Durante.
Let's go, Davido.
It's like a whole harsh new world you have to get used to.
It's remarkable. Yeah. Once again, the scores made 4/10 harder on every event.
David Durante.
So they need to do more and more bonus, and to get that bonus, you have to do the most difficult skills, and when you do that, sometimes you lose more than you get. And that right there, although it didn't look like a big error, didn't get his hand on the bar in a reverse grip.
But these release skills are
Beautiful.
spectacular.
But by not going into what is called an L grip, he loses 3/10 of a point in bonus, which I'm sure he was banking on, but classic David Durante style. Beautiful, beautiful gymnast.
I just wonder, Tim and Elfie, as they make the sport much more complicated, whether they make it so much more difficult to understand, even for the ardent fan.
It's very frustrating, and it's about to get a lot worse, to be perfectly honest, Al. This is one of the last championships that you'll see on both the men and the women's side, the score culminating with the potential of a perfect 10. After 2006 rolls around, the score will be open-ended, and there will be no perfect 10 anymore.
David Durante gets an 8.6. He's satisfied with that. And now Sean Golden. Again, a specialist. We'll see him in limited fashion on the floor. And now here. You see some of that artwork we started with on his back. He's on the still rings.
And Sean has really credited his move to Houston and working with that guy right there, Kevin Majika. He said, I was always a very good physical athlete, but Kevin has been able to help me to understand the mental aspect. And he said, you know, I've always had people behind me that believed in me, but now I actually believe in myself.
Yeah, and he says he trains more efficiently and he maximizes his talent a lot more. Being at the training center, he's a different athlete.
This part that he's about to do is just ridiculously hard, to go down and to push back up again like that. He's very strong.
Yeah, he scored a 9.55 the other night, remember?
You see those holds, they're plenty long enough and excellent positions. Lifts his head to show Jim Hartung on the judging panel that this is easy for me. This is a great routine so far. A good landing, and it could be 9-5 plus territory, and nowadays that is stratospheric.
Hey, you think Kevin's happy he made the journey to Houston?
A great landing to punctuate things for Sean Golden.
Really remarkable. If the rules hadn't changed, though, a guy like Sean Golden would not have factored in for the U.S. team. But because there are athletes like David Sender that can excel not just in the all-around, but on certain events, it gives a guy like Sean Golden an opportunity.
David Sender trying to make a move and catch up to Todd Thornton. He had the top spot for one rotation.
Gonna be hard here, Al. This is not one of David's best events. He really struggles a little bit on parallel bars and high bar. Doesn't have the difficulty that he needs, and it's not that he doesn't hit his set, because he's hitting it, but he just doesn't do anything hard enough to bring in those big numbers.
signals the end of the rotation. Do some housekeeping. Sean Golden at 9.55. That's a big score for him, and he enjoys that. Now, as far as the status of David Sender, it's an 8.25. There will be no change atop the leaderboard, which we'll take a look at when we come back to Indianapolis after this. Back in Indianapolis for the final rotation of the 2005 Visa Men's Gymnastics Championships, Todd Thornton has a very solid lead, over 3/10 of a point over David Durante, and then it's David Sender, followed by Hagerty, Alvarez, and the rest. Now, Sean Townsend has been one of those quote-unquote specialists, someone who's not competing in all 6 events at this point in his career, only 3. Problem is, the first 2 he fell off of.
And I'm a little bit scared now, to be perfectly honest, because he's planning on doing a very, very difficult vault. Handspring double front with a half. The day he's been having, I don't know.
He doesn't do it.
That was a very, very smart thing.
Okay, go ahead.
He did not add the extra half turn, and I know a part of him, certainly a big part of him, wanted to do it. I'm personally glad that he didn't today, because this vault alone is hard enough, and when you add a half turn at the end of that, aka Marian Dragulescu from Romania, you have to be at your absolute top of your game. And we haven't seen that today from Sean. Second vault, different family of vaults. And that one, done very nicely.
Nice finish, nice finish.
And the only Olympian in the field will take that 9.4. Now David Durante, he needs a big home run to take over first place from Todd Thornton. He needs to do better than a 9.601. And now Thornton is chalking up as well. This will be played out almost simultaneously now, with Durante on floor and Thornton on vault. You almost wish the drama coach of the event would stop and say, okay, you go and then you go, but that's not how it's going to happen here.
And it'll get very dramatic right off the top. His most difficult tumbling run ends with a double front.
And out of bounds.
And out of a championship right there. There's no way that he can come even close to that better than 9.6 mark that he needed. Not just feet out of bounds, but any body part, if it touches the white, incurs another deduction on top of 5/10 for putting your hands down. So I don't know if he's doing the math in his head, but he's got to get it together the rest of the way just to make sure and finish in the top 3 here. Dismount, full twisting double. Well, a little disappointing all around for David Durante. Really came into this championships and thought he had a very good shot to win, and so did I.
I think staying in, because there was a little back, yeah, over there.
As that was unfolding, here is what Todd Thornton did. He would have been able to, out of the corner of his eye, if he allowed himself to see that early slip by Durante.
Okay,
very nice double twisting Sukahara, and just as on the women's side, Nastia Lukin sealed her first ever senior national all-around title. So does Todd Thornton. This pretty much put it out of reach for David Durante. Holds on too long.
And at the same time, you see Todd Thornton running down the runway to capture his first senior title.
I actually thought there was a little bit more time, so there's no way that Thornton could have seen that, but he knows now.
National champion.
Sean Townsend says that's right, he is the man.
4 years ago, he was at these championships. He was the all-around winner. Later went on to win parallel bars at the World Championships that year.
Durante gets only a 7.9. And we'll have to see what the final standings are going to be and who is going to be on the podium. As we continue in the final rotation, David Sender was the leader for a while. Now he's got one last performance to wind up on the podium and finish top 3. This championship may be determined and Todd Thornton will be crowned, but there's a tremendous amount of prestige left to finish on the podium. Top 3 in a national championship. Now that's not something for Sean Golden. He's going to be competing here in a specialist role and on the vault.
Big vault too. Yeah. Very, very nicely done. So glad to see all the success this young man has gotten his hands on at these championships. Remember, he will be someone to watch over the next few years. A guy like him certainly can factor in as a specialist down the road.
Now, David Sender needs an 8.876 to take over and finally claim second place.
Very doable.
Yeah, he scored a 9.1 the other day, so shouldn't be a problem.
Same mount that Paul and Morgan Hamm used at the Olympics. Double twisting, double somersault. Step on the landing, but very difficult. You see a lot of these combination tumbling runs. Many of the athletes doing 3 bounding elements in a row. This event is really tailor-made for gymnasts like David Sender. Very powerful, but also a very quick gymnast. And the quicker you can be on the floor, punching the ground, the more height you can generate.
Just like that. That was huge.
That skill popularized by one of my heroes, Kurt Thomas. Combination tumbling run.
Oh.
And a nice exercise, but here and there were some errors.
Of course, the last thing the judges see, the step out of bounds.
Amazing, though, how much these athletes have to do to get a good score. It's just remarkable, the magnitude of difficulty that's needed.
Sean Golden, 9.7. That's the way to wrap up a championship. And Justin Spring on the high bar.
And this can be fun, I'll tell you. He is a high flyer. He'll do similar release skill. Gets a little bit more height and beautiful form in the air on that.
But you gotta love it because he takes those release skills right to the edge.
Do a Illini in the arena today. Did a great job at the American Cup, ended up second on this event. Triple back.
They loved it anyway.
Congratulations from Yoshi Hayasaki as coach at Illinois.
David Sender gets a 9.075. That will put him in second place, and you see the resulting smile from that. And the last thing that needs to be determined as Justin Spring gets a 9.3 is who is going to finish third. Joseph Hagerty needs a huge score, 9.651, to take that spot.
And those numbers have not come easy today. We just saw a 9.7 from Sean Golden, but David Durante presently in third place. So Hagerty has the chance. Very difficult first tumbling pass. Joe's overall consistency has improved quite a bit.